The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear. And the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist. But we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Folks, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you within a cannon shot of historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So, a quick note, like we normally say at the beginning of the show, Arcane Radio and Beyond Explanation channel is made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. Super chat donations are essential for us to continue offering you this unique content, and your consideration is very much appreciated. Now, I'm going to basically talk about the cryptid activity and reports that we've been picking up lately. You know, we've received 3 winged being reports in the Chicago region over the past, 3 weeks or so, and as well, Stan Gordon has reported on 2 supposed Thunderbird sightings in and around Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and a Bigfoot encounter in Fayette County that was just reported this past week or so. And that was sent over to Eric over at Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. So if you have an encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me at LonStricklerFansOfMonsters.com. Or call me directly using the phone number posted at phantomsofmonsters.com. So tonight, I welcome paranormal researcher, author, and Into the Fray podcaster, Shannon LeGro. Now, Shannon has been interested in the paranormal ever since she was a teen after her own paranormal sighting of something truly anomalous. And although it's not what her encounter entailed, one of her passions is the subject of Sasquatch. She strives to bring a fresh perspective and an open mind to the most intriguing mysteries in our universe. She is a host and producer of the popular podcast Into the Fray, and can also be heard as a guest host on Midnight in the Desert. You can also see her in several small town monsters productions, including On the Trail of Bigfoot and On the Trail of UFOs. And there's a new one coming out soon. And it just was, they just wrapped up filming this week. So her weekly show Into the Fray has Shannon speaking to witnesses of cryptids, UFOs, and various aspects of the paranormal. She has co-authored books on both Bigfoot and the paranormal. And she founded Beyond Fray Publishing as well, doing very well. Shannon's website is intothefray.com. So Shannon, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you, Lon. Very happy to be back on with you.
So let's kind of go over again how you got involved in all this, how you became interested in the paranormal, and what put you on your path to what you do now.
Absolutely. So yeah, I guess we all have those inception stories, right? And I certainly do as well. And mine was, and I apologize, I know a lot of you guys probably heard me tell this a lot, but if there are a couple that haven't heard it, they may wonder why I'm into the weird. So I'm going to tell it again. Sorry, guys. Just bear with me. So around 12 years old, and my dad has a cabin in Utah, in Duck Creek, Utah, to be specific. Duck Creek is a place where a lot of Las Vegans like to go. It's about 5 hours outside of town. So we would go out there, especially heavily in the summer, obviously. And all we did as kids was either take our pellet guns out, little target practice, fishing, or foreling. On this particular day, It was quite nice out, so we went four-wheeling. And I just want to go ahead and note right off the bat that my dad had gone down into Cedar City to do something or other. So I decided not to wear my helmet, which is not a smart idea for anybody to do if you're riding such a thing. So that comes into play later, and you'll find out why. So I had no helmet and no goggles on. And the way that the roads there are set up, they're roads, but they're not paved. So they're dirt. So my brothers are riding in front of me, and we're riding at a pretty good clip down one of these roads. It's really a grid pattern in this area, so you can ride pretty quickly. Not a lot of traffic, obviously. Pretty rural area and laid back. So I'm hanging back because I don't want dust in my face because I don't have those goggles and I don't have that helmet on. And at some point, I look off into the woods to my right. And now it's broad daylight, no clouds. I can see perfectly fine. And off to my right, I can see four pitch black, what we now would call shadow figures, shadow people, whatever they are, running in the woods. And they are keeping pace with me as I am really moving at a good clip on my four-wheeler. And this, of course, immediately catches my attention because I know that they are very, very odd. These are not people. They were beyond completely devoid of light. It was almost like they were the cutouts of the deepest, darkest night, and somehow still darker than that. No light touched them. Also interesting to note, it wasn't like they were running through the trees. It's just like the trees weren't affecting them. They didn't have to dodge or duck any trees. They were not in their way in any way, shape, or form. And they were moving their arms and legs while they were running, which immediately also made me go, why do you guys need to do that? I watched them for about 5 seconds, a full 5 seconds, pretty good amount of time before I figured I had to check my path in front of me, which I did. And I immediately looked back and they were gone. And those 5 seconds was all it took. Granted, I didn't really talk about this experience until, 30 years later when I was on Sasquatch Chronicles, when I really had told it in full for the very first time. It was strike that. Let me say, for the second time, but the first time was to my father. Right after it happened, he got back and I told him, and he said, "Oh, they do military exercises out here all the time." He's a military guy. So that was not that shut me down all the way, but it definitely kind of makes you go, "Oh, okay. I'll just zip my lips about that." It's kind of a weird thing anyway. So I knew what I saw was very strange. And I've said many a times, as I'm sure you've heard something similar, Lon, that when you see something weird, that's one thing, but when it interacts with you, that's another. These guys did not interact with me in any way, shape, or form. They didn't look over, they didn't wave, they didn't wink. There was not even a whisper of a head turn towards me, even though I'd say they were 20 to 30 yards within the forest there. And it's important to note this part of Utah had almost no ground brush. It was just those aspen trees. They're very skinny, very tall, no ground brush. I saw them perfectly fine. So I just think that I got a glimpse maybe into another realm, another dimension there for a few seconds. And I don't even know if they were aware that I was there, but I sure as heck fire was aware of them. So that is my inception into the world of the weird.
Yeah, I remember the first time you told me that story. I still don't really know what you ran into, but you're probably right. It may have been a riff of some type into another dimension, possibly. These shadow figures, seeing them in a house is one thing, or seeing them, at a specific location, but seeing four of them run by you while you're out in a four-wheeler, well,
Yeah.
that's a little bit different,
Yeah.
So you really have no idea what it was.
No, and I wouldn't pretend to, be one of those people that says I know, because I absolutely do not. It was pretty cool to see them keeping pace with me as I'm really hauling tushy on my four-wheeler. I was going at a good clip. I mean, your kids, and of course I still tend to drive a little fast now, but you're reckless and you may be driving a little quicker than you should. But yeah, I didn't ride after that for a couple of days because it really did shake me up enough. I mean, it didn't terrify me or anything, but it was enough for me to go, hey, let's go fishing or let's hang out at the cabin. And my brother's like, what is your problem? They didn't understand at all.
So you had that experience, and then you became interested in Sasquatch. And how did that work?
You know what? I don't have really an inception story into that. A lot of people are like, I have, I saw Boggy Creek, or they have some. I really don't have a good story for that. I'm really boring in that aspect. I just one day I just found it, and it never stopped for me. And then I found podcasts at some point because I had been consuming books and all of the, whatever I could get my hands on, and then podcasts. I found those, and that's all I would listen to. I mean, I'd listen to you. I'd listen to, all of you guys that have been in this for a very long time. I was consuming all I could. And then actually books got put down on the back burner, and podcasts became my main way of consuming these stories from these experiencers, which I found to be incredible.
It's kind of difficult for me to understand how people even get into the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or cryptids in general, unless they had an encounter. And I've been fortunate enough to have an encounter. And, I can understand it on that level because, all I ever did before was just paranormal investigations, at homes and businesses and such, of bumps in the night and other strange phenomena. But when I did have that encounter in 81, well, that just changed it forever. And how does anybody really get into this, other than being pushed into it some other way? I just find that a little difficult, but, I can understand it. It's something people want to know what goes on. And, it just becomes, I don't know if it becomes a hobby. It becomes, for a lot of people, obsession. But, we all become enthusiasts of a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. I mean, did you go fishing long after that experience there, Lon? I mean, go down by the water and enjoy it quite the
I'll
same?
be honest with you, I had never gone fishing there again. I don't know if that's the reason why. Life happens, so you never know.
Right.
It's a story that I didn't tell many people about for years until maybe 1995, which was like 14 years later when the BFRO were taking reports, and I called the local BFRO investigator and I told him about it. That's the first that really got out.
Yeah.
But no, but I did start getting interested in it. The whole big Sykesville monster phenomena, which had actually happened years before that. But that area still has a lot of sightings. Even though it's much more, it's built up a lot now, but that part of the state park, well, even all the Patapsco State Park has had a lot of phenomena, including a lot of UFO activity.
What do you think? And sorry to flip the script here real quick, but what would you change about your sighting? Would have been closer, farther? What details maybe would you have changed about how you saw it or where you saw it?
Well, nothing really, other than the fact, of course, there was all this government involvement, right after it happened, which kind of confused me for a long time. I didn't really know why that became part of what I had experienced. When I first saw that thing, it looked like a Neanderthal, or what of the description of a Neanderthal would have been. And that's what I referred to it being, like an early caveman or something to that effect, because it didn't look more human than it did, ape or, So, that's why I really didn't say a whole lot. But of course, when all this, when I went back and all these government people were there and, local authorities, that just went into an entirely different realm. And that's why I think that's really why I became more interested, because I was kind of surprised that they would really be interested in what I had seen. And apparently I know someone had seen it earlier that same day and they were chasing it. So I don't know what the whole situation was, but I think this thing probably escaped from somewhere. Now, the area where I lived at was between Baltimore and Washington, and there's a lot of government facilities all around there that we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think there was something involved there. So, and over the years, investigating the Bigfoot activity and some of the other stuff that happened around that Baltimore, Washington metro area, I've become pretty convinced that may be what happened.
The implications of that, though, and it being the more human looking kind, and escaping from a human facility, that's a whole nother can of terrifying worms right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's just stuck in my craw for a long time. And, every once in a while it'll come back to me like, but what's this? Why did that happen? Why did it become more involved like that? When my story first came out, when they actually did the filming on Monsters and Mysteries of America, and it came out, a lot of people were surprised that, that did actually happen, as far as with the government involved and, the police and everything, because quite frankly, you don't hear a whole lot about that, though we know it does happen occasionally. But I think that the government's very involved with the Bigfoot phenomenon.
I've always said that as much as I want to see a Bigfoot, I want that confirmation experience. I've had a couple of interesting auditory experiences that may have been Bigfoot. I can't say, right? Because I didn't see. I think that for me personally, and I could be way off, but I think for me personally, to see one of the more human looking faced Sasquatch would, I don't know if mess me up would be the term, or, bother me more, or maybe just because there's more questions there about things that maybe, people find very uncomfortable with a more human looking Bigfoot.
Yeah. And that's kind of what confused me, because, around the time I had seen this thing, the Boggy Creek thing had been out, the movie, and most of the Bigfoot sightings that you heard about, of course, with the Patterson-Gimlin film, looked like what people described as a Bigfoot. It didn't look much like what I saw.
Yeah.
What I saw was different, more human, but I mean, this thing was huge. And, but since I have gotten involved with this, and then over the years, these sightings are fairly common, especially on the East Coast. The more human aspect, having a more human aspect of a lot of these sightings is pretty, I'd say, more relevant here on the East Coast.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think on the West, we have the classic, Pacific Northwest massive apes, just straight up. Well, if you want to, whatever you want to call it, the ape looking, gorilla looking creature does seem to be more prevalent out this way.
Yeah. And, and I do believe that the sightings that are in Northern California, northward up into British Columbia, I think for the most part that those are actual indigenous beings. I mean, of course, people see a lot of groups, a lot of possible family groups in that area, and I think that is probably an indigenous being in that area. But of course, here in Pennsylvania and in the upper Midwest and such, I don't think that's the case. And I still say that, and people, there's always an argument about it that, well, where are they coming from? Well, most of the time we say singular Bigfoot or a singular creature. And why is that? Very rarely do we see juveniles or two at a time. It's usually something that shows up quickly and leaves quickly. Now, of course, you've heard Stan's story about, with the UFO involvement and such out at Chestnut Ridge. And there's, we hear a lot of stories around here of paranormal-like involvement with the phenomena. That's why I think there's definitely a supernatural aspect of the Bigfoot in this area and other areas. But of course, in areas like I said, the Pacific Northwest, around the Gulf of Mexico, into Florida, and maybe the whole way around, basically into Texas. I think a lot of those are indigenous beings. But I think what people are seeing other than that in other parts of the country may very well be a supernatural being.
Well, I've always wanted to ask you this, and maybe it's null and void if if you're on fully in kind of the paranormal side of things. But if they do come in and out, say they're all in, they're all of them that can be in or in. What kind of numbers are you thinking? Could there?
Well, see, that's tough. I mean, I think if these things, even though they are very elusive and such, if they were all indigenous, we'd definitely have a body by now, I think. Or we'd have a live one or something like that. I think we'd have one. I really do. Thousands. If they were actually breeding here, it would be tens of thousands, I would definitely say. I mean, I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that from people, but I think that's the facts.
You're in trouble now, Lon. You're in big trouble.
Buddy. Well, that's nothing new for me. Just like what's been going on in and around Chicago and Lake Michigan. Mm-hmm. Those beings, those winged beings, are coming in and out quickly. I mean, they're fleeting sightings. People see them, and then some people have actually seen them disappear, or they just take off somewhere and you don't see it anymore. I do strongly believe that those have an interdimensional supernatural aspect to them. And I think the Bigfoot phenomena in these areas where they probably are not indigenous, I think that's possibly what's going on there. And, we talk about the upright canines and dogman. I think the same thing there. I think a lot of these cryptids, for whatever reason, is the veil thinning some way, or are they able to get through a rift and get into the same get into our earth plane for some reason? Maybe. I mean, but it just seems awful strange that we just not have found any real physical evidence of these beings.
Yeah, and I forget who it was I spoke to. I'm the worst with the actual numbers of my show, episode numbers and such. It was someone that was a researcher, and he would go out quite often for Bigfoot purposes, solely for Bigfoot. And one day he had followed a very distinct trackway into a copse of trees, and it was literally, like he said, basically like a circle, not a perfect circle, but it was a circle of trees. Nothing in the middle, no way, no how that this thing could have done this. But he said the trackway just ended in the middle of this stand of trees. And, he's looking up like, where did it go? We're in trees, but he's just going physically, even though, yes, it is a powerful being. There was no way that it could have gotten out of there the way that it did and have this trackway just abruptly end.
Yeah. When J.C. Johnson was still around, he ran into a lot of that out there in the Four Corners area, where they would follow a track line. And, Jack talks about it now as well. They'd find a track line and they'd follow it, and the thing would just stop.
Yeah.
Like this thing got a running start and took off and sprouted wings and left, or went into some other dimension or something, went into a portal. It does happen. And, we found the same thing with the upright canine phenomena, where you would just see it, and all of a sudden this thing would be gone. And people tell you that, and they, the first thing they want to know is, well, what's going on here? Well, all I can do is take the information from folks, and we can make some theories, we can make conjectures, but until we get any physical evidence or get it on video or get it somewhere else to where we, actually see something, then, all we can do is, use a theory or come up with conjecture. That's just the bottom line at this point.
Wait, we're not experts, Lon? What are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand people when they call you can contact with you and ask you about these things. Of course, they want answers. It's just like the thing that happened in Chicago last week where this guy, 69-year-old man, just east, he lived about 2 miles east of O'Hare in Portage Park. He's out in the yard with his neighbor, and he looks up and he sees this thing. It looks like a dragon. I mean, it's got huge wings, got the body of a dragon, what people describe as a dragon. And this thing, he just can't believe what he's looking at. He had no idea of the winged humanoid phenomena that had been going on around there. But he saw it. This thing tipped its head down, flapped its wings twice, and shot off to the north and vanished within seconds. And, he's there dumbfounded. He tells his brother about it. His brother gets online, finds my number, and then the guy gives me a call. And he's asking me, what in the hell did I see? I said, I tell you what, go back to and read all the sightings that have been going on in Chicago for the past 4 or 5 years. And when you get done reading, if you come up with any theories, call me, because I have no idea what people are seeing.
Right.
So actually, this is the first dragon report we got out there. So I don't know if this thing's changing somehow or, I guess everybody's perspective, they have their own perspective of things. But, I think Manuel is canvassing the Portage Park area for other sightings. I do know I did get a triangle sighting just about a couple blocks from this sighting a couple days later. So there have been some UFO sightings there as well. So I don't know if that's related or not.
Very close, though.
Yeah.
So you mentioned kind of the gentleman wasn't familiar with winged humanoids, but this thing didn't have like a humanoid body. This was a straight up dragon looking guy.
Yeah. He used the analogy. I don't know if you have any idea do you remember the old Sinclair gas stations?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember the Brontosaurus?
Yeah.
That was their mascot. They used to give out these little green Brontosaurus plastic figures to their customers. And that's what he said it looked like.
Oh, wow.
And of course, my great uncle used to own a Sinclair station. So it hit me right off the bat. I mean, and I said, well, yeah, did it look like a Brontosaurus? He said, yeah, it looked like that big dinosaur you see. And I said, okay. And he said he had a viper-like head, and the tail had a spade-like appendage to it. The wings were as wide as this thing was long. It had the big body, and there was definitely membrane wings. And I'm thinking, well, that's a dragon, I guess. I mean, so I don't know what he saw, but that's what he said it looked like. And of course, his neighbor saw it, and he said the same thing. So it wasn't like it was something in his imagination or something he hallucinated. It was something that both of them saw.
I have things that are on what my listeners know I call the no list, but I think a dragon would definitely be on the yes list. I want to see a dragon. Yes.
Well, I've had dragon sightings before. New Jersey, for whatever reason, is an area where we've had dragon sightings. Of course, you got the Jersey Devil, which kind of looks like a dragon, I guess, if you want to stretch it a bit. But I've had people actually describe huge dragons, literally flying about in certain areas of central and southern New Jersey. I had one out in California a couple of years ago near a casino. This thing was flying over the parking lot of a casino in the valley, Central Valley, and a couple of people saw it. So,
what's the closest that any of these reports have gotten to one of these creatures?
Pretty close. Pretty close. I mean, the one of those in New Jersey, he said he stopped. He was in his car. He had stopped the car because he had seen it fly around. He got out of the car. He said there was a guy that stopped the car in front of him, and he was looking out the window. He said this thing swooped down and went over them. He didn't hear anything, but he felt heat and wind. I had a witness out in California say they were on the road pulling in to the casino, and this thing went over the car. That's how they saw it. Went over the car and ahead of them, and the wind that it caused actually moved the car. They could feel it. So, you know, they can't really go into the hallucination department or whatever you want to say, but I don't know. You know, I just don't know what to say when I get something like that. It's like, okay, I'll put it in a file and see if anything else comes up. So,
right.
You know, it's just like most of the stuff we get.
See, but I love that really, really off the wall. I mean, we talk about weird, but I love the really weird stuff. And I love the dragon reports are very cool. And the part where you said there's the wind and then heat. I wasn't expecting that part. That's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, he was pretty emphatic about the heat. The color of this, actually, I think this thing, it was kind of a brownish looking one, but there was another one where it was actually red.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, I'm honest. I think I've heard everything for the most part, but boy, I'm telling you, every once in a while something will come to you and like, oh my God, you got to shake your head. And, that's what this whole thing in Chicago has been like. I mean, I have heard of flying humanoids, of course, Mothman and that, but, something for that to continue the way it has been. I mean, right now we're up to about 130 reports in that area. I'm talking about a radius of like 200, 250 miles from Chicago on out. And we got about 130 reports that we accumulated that we feel are legitimate. We've had a lot more. We've had a lot of different stuff. But and every time I get one, it's like you're opening up a new chapter. It's like, what in the hell are people seeing? And for the most part, these people had no idea this phenomenon has been going on. They're so glad that they're able to tell somebody who has had other reports that they're almost giddy.
Do you find that most of the people that specific to these more Mothman or humanoid sightings out in Chicago, have they gone to your site and have already read a few of these reports and that's what prompted them to contact you, or they found you and then afterward you're like, hey, you might want to check out my site because there's more like you?
After the first couple months of the sightings in 2017, now of course we had some in 2011 as well, but I started running an ad in Google, and I put up there winged humanoids, Mothman, Chicago Mothman, and I put it up there figuring that if people did actually get on there and start searching for it, it would come up. And that has been where they've been coming from. They of course, they probably get on Google and say man with wings and figure that nothing's going to come up. But when that Google ad comes up there saying, describing something that they actually saw, they're coming to me. They're giving me a call right away.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
I've gotten a lot of calls within like a half hour of the sightings.
Well, see, now if that doesn't tell you that something's really going on, because you're not just getting one guy here and then 3 weeks later, one guy over there, you're getting several calls the same day from that same area. So that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. And of course, the witnesses have been very diverse. We've had police officers. I've talked to a few police officers off record who didn't want anything said about who actually had encounters. Or cops are telling me that people have told them of what they had experienced. Of course, with all these sightings in and around O'Hara Airport the past 18 months or so, we have TSA people, security people, pilots, transit drivers, and air traffic controllers. So, they're coming forward. Now, O'Hara's been really pushing back on people. You know, a lot of times these people will state something to a supervisor and say, look, I saw this and this out in the tarmac or out and about, and they tell them, oh, you just saw a big owl, don't report to anybody. And there's a, oh, well, you know, that's crap. So they're, you know, they do come forward. You know, we've been very good about keeping it confidential, but the one phenomenon that has happened since then is, and I've talked to security people out there, they've been pulling people off of the property and arresting people who are doing their own paranormal investigation of the O'Hara Mothman. So there's been a lot of that out there as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really heating up out there. Well, as you mentioned too, I mean, Tobias is out there. Tobias and Emily are out there with Small Town Monsters right now. So crossing our fingers that maybe they actually get to see something live and in person.
Well, Manuel Navarrete, he actually had a sighting. He was out there doing an investigation of a sighting at O'Hara, and he saw something. So, you know, that kind of hits home.
What he saw? How close was it?
He saw it actually coming down and landing on top of a building out at the airport.
That's cool. Love that.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I tell you, you've heard a lot of Sasquatch stories in the past. What's the strangest one you've ever heard?
Oh, let's see. The strangest one. Gosh, strange. That one put me on the spot there, Lon. That's a good question.
Put it this way, your favorite. Let's do it that way.
All right, that's maybe a little better. I'm like, strange. I've heard so many that some of them each have.
I guess they're all strange. I mean, if you get into it,
yeah, they each have their own little kind of oddity. I mean, of course, I've heard of, you know, Bigfoot kind of being around orbs and things. I've had my own orb experience while out Bigfooting. I didn't see a Bigfoot, never have, but I had my own orb experience while out Bigfooting. But that's a whole nother story. But I would say that, and actually this may be a little bit strange and scary, all kind of rolled into one, but it happened in Bear Mountain State Park in New York State. And this gentleman named Chris, he was part of a day camp situation with some other kids. So, you know, they'd bus out, they'd go to a location and come back home the same day. And they're at Bear Mountain for some hiking around. And he admits that he was younger and he wanted to be a little bit on the naughty side. So he and another young man went off to smoke a cigarette away from the counselors. So that's what they decided to do. And when they figured they were far enough away to not get in trouble, they went to light up, or pardon me, his friend went to light up, and they're facing each other. And the friend is like going like this and looks up and just stops what he's doing. He drops the cigarette and the lighter and bolts back the direction that he came. So Chris is left there standing alone going, what is your problem? So he turns around, and what he sees is he estimates about 10 foot tall, gray in color Sasquatch. And it is within, I believe he said, about 10 feet. So incredibly, shockingly close for this thing that size. And no one's ever taken a measuring tape and just taken it 10 feet up, I encourage you to do so. It would be quite shocking to see something that tall. So in one hand, this Sasquatch is holding something implement of clothing, a blanket, something ripped up, torn up, right, in one hand. In the other hand is the bottom half of a medium-sized dog, just the one half of this dog. And the entrails are kind of hanging out, and it is a horrifying scene for Chris. And this episode was entitled Scarface because this particular Sasquatch had a massive scar that went down over one eye and all the way down the side of his cheek area. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting aspect to think of. You know, we see just glimpses of these things, or we get reports of just glimpses, but what are their lives really like? Like, how did he get that scar? You know, was that a fight with another Bigfoot or a dog man or climbing a tree and he's just clumsy. That would be me. So those are the little tidbits in a story that you're kind of going, why would Chris make that part up? Like that's just such a weird thing to bring up. So the scar, I think, and not that I'm diminishing the dog or the implement, which I'll get back to that in a second, but I just think that he said it was a really horrible scar. That was a pretty cool part of that story. So the implement of clothing or fabric, I should say, I keep calling it clothing, the fabric. He said that bothered him more than anything because he's like, was that the dog's blanket? Was that someone's clothing? Was that the dog's owner's clothing or something? What is going on with that piece of fabric? So that's one of my favorite, I think, Sasquatch encounters told on my show. It was, in fact, told first on Sasquatch Chronicles many, many years ago. But he actually came back on with me for ITF. So that's one of my favorite Sasquatch encounters. And not great for Chris, though, obviously. It was a terrifying situation for him. He stood there for a few seconds and finally bolted back to camp. And he tried to talk to his friend that had left him so ceremoniously. The kid wouldn't talk. He was traumatized. And still to this day, kid will not, or the guy, he's a guy now. He's a man. He won't talk about it. So...
I've had literally thousands of Bigfoot reports, but the gory aspects of a Bigfoot encounter, you don't hear a whole lot of that, and you think you probably would. Even something descriptive as the scar, that he was lucky enough to get close to that thing to see that scar. But no, you don't get a lot of reports that have something attached to it that really hits home with the actual sighting itself. Right. That's an interesting sighting. And then you think, did this Bigfoot rip this dog after he ripped the owner apart, or what happened?
Right. Yeah, and that's what really bothered Chris about that whole thing. And not even just, obviously being that close to a Sasquatch would be humbling to say the least. But that he's like, I just don't know what that piece of fabric was after all these years, and I still wonder about that. And he didn't go, as we've heard many times, he didn't go back in the woods for quite a long time, but it actually kind of became a bug in his ear and almost an obsession, and he did end up starting to go out and do more investigations for Bigfoot. So, and you hear that all the time, right, Lon? Either lights a fire or you're like, I'm moving to a condo in the middle of the city and I'm never going in the woods again. So it goes either way.
Well, I tell you, I used to hunt a lot. I used to hunt a lot when I was younger. And I have never been back out in the woods with a gun ever since I had my encounter.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Now, I don't know if it's because of that. I don't know if it's because my wife didn't like me going hunting or what it was, but I really have not been out in the woods or even out in the fields or anything doing any hunting since then. And I'll be quite frank with you, I'd really have to second guess about going out into an area where I really don't know what's the area itself and alone and doing something like that. There just seems you hear a lot of different stories of a lot of different things. And some of these stories are horrifying. And it makes I would second guess going back out there. That's just me. If I had Butch and Sean with me or something, yeah, okay, we'll do that. But I'd be very wary of going out into one of these areas again.
Yeah, that's a good point with the weapons, because that's something comes up all the time. People go, well, did I see the Bigfoot because I had a weapon? Or, it is really a gray area, because you really should carry if you're going into the woods. But there's crazy people and there's mountain lions and all sorts of the things that we're very familiar with. But they know what a gun is. Of course they do. Of
Sure, they
course they
do.
know what it is. So it does make you wonder, does it draw them in or does it scare them off? I don't know.
And I thought about that a lot because a lot of these upright canine sightings have been made by hunters who are fully armed with sidearms and a rifle. And they'll walk up on one of these things and this thing will stand its ground and look, stare him down. And they have no thoughts of taking a shot at this thing. I don't know if it's some type of infrasound or some type of infrasound that coming from the beast that causes this for them to back off or not do that. There's been a lot of theories about that a Bigfoot or an upright canine or other cryptids have the ability to kind of get in your head and try to talk you down or try to get you to back away. But I think for the most part, when you're shocked enough to see something like that, I think you'd have to second guess taking a pop shot at it.
Oh yeah, and you hear the people that are going, I had the biggest gun with the biggest rounds because I was hunting something large.
Right.
And they go, even with a really, really good shot, a well-placed shot, it still wouldn't have been enough. I just would have pissed this thing off.
Yep, you're right. I don't think I've talked to you since the first On the Trail of UFOs came out, which, by the way, if you have not seen it, I know it's about 1.5, 2 years old. It is excellent. Butch was involved with Butch and Sean were involved with one of the episodes. But you did such a good job. I swear. It was very interesting. I can't imagine how this second one's going to be. So you give me an idea of what is this second one entails a bit. I don't say too much because I don't want you getting in trouble, but give us an idea of what the second version of the Trail of UFOs is going to be like.
Yeah, thanks, Lon. Yeah, that first season did turn out awesome, and
yeah, it was good.
I've seen the final cut of season 2, and I'm super excited for everybody to see it. I really, really am. And I know that sounds silly because I'm actually in it, so obviously I'm going to say that. But this one is really, really good, guys. So I'm very excited about it. But we're mostly hanging out in a lot of it West Virginia, which all of us have agreed is just one of our favorite states. It's just so diverse, and from the people, they're so nice, to the landscape, and it's got a ton of cool, weird stuff going on there. And the UFO reports that we got firsthand were some of my favorites that I've ever heard. And actually, one of my favorite witnesses was Kenneth, and you'll be seeing a lot of him in season 2. And we actually saw Kenneth again on this very last trip that we went on a few weeks ago, and found us in an actual cave. It was my first time in a legitimate cave. I
saw a picture on your Facebook page of you in the cave. So yeah, you didn't look too thrilled.
It's the first time that they've got me screaming like a girl on film, because the ceiling of the cave was right above our heads. Essentially, at some points we were kind of duck crawling, very ceremoniously to get to an open spot in the cave, and one of the guys goes, "Hey Shannon, look up." I look up, and there are, at first I thought they were all spiders, but they were cave crickets, which look suspiciously just like spiders. They're hideous. And then we saw the black widows. So Shannon is officially on film screaming like a girl. Yeah. I'm big time busted. I'm not super girly. A lot of people that know me probably know that, but yeah, the screams came out on that one. Not long peeling ones or anything too dramatic, but no, we've got a lot of very unique reports coming out for season 2, and there was a really cool pattern that it's been postulated before, but there was a pattern that we kind of figured out for this whole thing, which it lends to other theories about where they might be from, what they might be doing here, as far as the who, why, what, and where is really what we were trying to cover for season 2. And I may have had kind of my own sighting in there too. So Yeah, it'll be out this summer, so I really hope that everybody checks that out. It's going to be on most VOD platforms, and I'm sure back on Amazon Prime as well.
Yeah, with this so-called disclosure coming forth supposedly next month, and they've been kind of talking it up. I don't know what to expect, but when I read that article that came out last week where a former astronaut literally said that if you think aliens and UFOs are tied together, you got another thing coming. I mean, he just comes right out there and says that aliens and UFOs are not connected. So the first thing you're thinking is, well, okay, so what's going on? What are people are seeing? I'm not really sold on the idea of intergalactic vehicles coming through space and showing up here. I think a lot of the lights and stuff that we do see can be explained away somehow. But I think, and I don't know if you've covered this in the film, but I think a lot of it has to do with portal or wormhole travel, and these craft are coming through somehow.
Well, see, and isn't that interesting what he said, that they're just not tied in at all? Because then does that mean, and I know that you've talked about things like this, does that then mean that these craft are all in between government craft or, futuristic craft of human beings? So straight up, it's us in the future coming back. We're, whatever, we're high-fiving whoever is here for whatever reason. And then the ETs then, classic grays, or these other beings, then are, people have labeled them demonic, right?
Yeah.
They say that, these demonic entities and other such things that are really quite dark and nasty and you don't want around, they can change in any shape that they want. And a lot of times we hear, not a lot of times, occasionally you will hear, once people have a sighting of a craft, then they'll start to have kind of these abduction scenarios, or they'll start to see grays in their home, but they also have poltergeist activity, like straight up classic poltergeist activity, things moving, and they don't see a gray moving it. It's just straight up poltergeist activity. So I'm not sure what to make of that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because poltergeist activity in a lot of instances is tied to UFO sightings. For whatever reason, I've talked to people who have had poltergeist activity in their home or wherever around them, and many of them have had UFO sightings.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, again, I don't know if there's a connection. Many abduction scenarios that I have been privy to and talked to people do not happen or have no relevance with a craft or UFO. It's usually where something will come into the room where they're at or somewhere else, and they would see these beings, but they will not see a craft. And they'll go somewhere, but they don't know if it's a craft or what it is.
Right.
When I heard that statement by that astronaut, I was thinking to myself that, well, maybe he's just saying this to kind of tamp down the expectations. I don't know. I don't really think that we're ever going to get much out of the government as far as extraterrestrials or alien beings and such. I don't think that's going to happen. I think a lot of people hope that's going to happen, or maybe be something that's involved with this so-called disclosure that we're getting. But when people ask me what to expect, what's forthcoming, I just say, don't get your hopes up, because I just don't think they're going to tell you so much.
Yeah, and George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell just came out with that stuff on Mystery Wire. Another radar, situation with all these bogies, and the radar operators are talking about it. And it is a cool video, and you do kind of have to watch the breakdown to really understand what you're looking at, unless you're a military radar operator of some sort. It may be a little tough, but it's not that it's a total letdown. But I was, in my brain, I'm kind of going, where's the alien body video? Where's the interview with the alien? I want that so bad. It might be kind of dark of me, but I am totally on board with you. I'm going, they know we can't handle that. If that's out there, I just don't know that human beings are, I don't know that we're ready for that.
Well, that may very well be. I've heard some real horror stories over the years. I even wrote a book about it. That don't expect the government to disclose much about aliens. The only exposure that you're going to get is going to come from experiencers, and I don't think it's going to go too far beyond that. But I do believe that there are alien beings. I do believe that people have had encounters with them. Some of the evidence I've gotten from David Eckhart over the years has convinced me that there's something going on. I've had encounters. I've had one real strong encounter, and I had another one later. And it's been difficult for me to realize what I actually saw or was told. And I was told a lot of different things, but when you come out of it, and then when you're sitting there thinking about what happened during the encounter, you kind of second guess yourself. That's why I think a lot of people are so confused by it. If you're not used to dealing with this, with other people's experiences, I think when it happens to you, first of all, you're shocked, you're scared to death what had probably happened, but you just had difficulty explaining it, especially to someone else, let alone understanding it. And but I do think it's a real phenomenon. I really do. I mean, I don't discount people. When I get a report, the first thing I'm thinking is, when they take the time to contact me, I'm part of their experience now.
Yes.
And it's my obligation to tell it like they told it, not to question them. And, until I find out otherwise, and I'd say 99% of the things I've been told over the years are believable. I mean, I think they're tangible, and I think they're believable.
You're talking about strange Sasquatch experiences, and not that every quote unquote ET or alien or UFO encounter isn't strange in its own way, and each Bigfoot encounter is as well, and other subjects. Sorry, guys, not to leave everybody else out, but I don't know if you've ever talked to Chad and Alta Dillard or heard their experiences, but just a quick snapshot. They've had several experiences, but I think the very first one they were in New Orleans, and they were out on a busy road, and they, again, a snapshot, they were taken up into what they perceived was a craft.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad was in one of these quote unquote rooms of this craft, and he could actually see outside, see the stars, and he got the sense that he was in fact up in space.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw in this very stark room just a lone, like a regular recliner, like a brown chair or something, like just a chair, a normal chair. But he knew, and he got the sense that he just could not and should not sit in that chair. It's just very random thing, and
Mm-hmm.
that popped into my head as far as what is a very strange aspect to really what is a classic. I was taken into the sky by things that I didn't know what they were. He actually saw a human being on that craft and all this stuff, but that chair thing always stuck with me. Him going, I knew I shouldn't sit in the chair, so I didn't sit in the chair.
Yeah, some of these things you hear are just, they're hard to comprehend, I guess. But I've got beyond the point where I get a sighting or a report or an experience from a witness, and I hedge on putting it out there for consumption.
Right.
I'm not worried about what people think anymore. I do my diligence to put it out there and get people to try and understand what happened. But, I'm not letting it. I don't let it bother me anymore. It just kind of rolls off my back now.
No, you can't. And really, those are the data points that, at the time you're kind of going, Wow, that is weird and interesting and cool, and I don't know what to make of that, but those are the data points that need to be out there because there might just be somebody listening even a year or 5 years or 10 years from now and go, "Oh my gosh, I had that exact same experience." You know, and their mind is blown and they're gonna get in contact with you, and now you've got a new thread to follow, which we've got about how many now, Lon? We probably got about 1,000,000 threads to follow, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Shannon, tell the folks what books you got coming out soon, what else to expect with Small Town Monsters, and whatever you can think of, whatever you want people to know about, and how to get onto your website.
Absolutely. So, website is intothefrayradio.com. And I have, of course, am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for myself and Into the Fray. And as far as the books, the ones that are out is Beyond the Fray Bigfoot and Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation. And I am right now, we are in the process, Jeff and I, of compiling more Bigfoot stories for Beyond the Fray Bigfoot Part 2. So really looking for more Bigfoot stories for that upcoming. And then for Small Town Monsters, I know of a trip that I will be going on, but I am not sure if I'm allowed to say where that is right now. So
that's cool.
Shouldn't. I apologize. But yeah, there is definitely more coming up from Small Town Monsters, which is going to be really exciting.
Well, like I told you before, I hope at some point you and I can do an investigation or do a production together or something to that effect. I definitely want you to come back on the show quicker than you have been before.
Yes,
so we can cover some things. I'm always available to come on with you, and I just do enjoy talking to you. I've always had a good time talking to you. You kind of, I don't know, you kind of get it. Let's put it that way. You understand. So thanks again for coming on tonight. Keep in contact. Let me know what's going on, and we will be talking soon.
Absolutely, Lon. Thank you so much.
Okay, you take care and have a good weekend.
All right, everybody be safe out there.
Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Families of Monsters blog site. I want to again thank Shannon LeGro for joining me this evening. And thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you made a super chat donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes all this possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. Until next week, and I think Ken Gerhardt is our guest next week. So that should be a great show. So stay healthy, have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Good night.